Greetings to everyone. My name is Bruce Kerber. I'm the author and originator of the Divine Economy Models and the Divine Economy Theory. I'm an economist in the classical liberalism tradition. Hold on to your hats. We're about to go on a journey that will take us to places never seen before in economics. First, we'll look at macroeconomics. The economy is everywhere. It is all around us and it is in us. Its pervasiveness is remarkable. The fact that the divine economy theory is now discovered is evidence that we are in a new cycle. At the same time, this new cycle has a nature about it that requires a new theory. How do we know what the uncorrupt economy looks like unless it is seen as having a pure form? Those who recognize that the economy operates perfectly well independently hold laissez-faire up as the pure form. But they have not made any connection to the divine nature of the human being as an essential identity. This is a new thought and is worthy of consideration. Human planners of the economy are hopeless failures and can be more aptly described as oppressors. In the real economy, the divine economy, there is a central planner who is all-knowing and all-seeing and perfectly just. It is God. So, what does the economy look like? This is the macroeconomic model. As you can see, there are four major interactive elements that constitute the divine economy framework. This is the anatomy of the divine economy. The skeletal structure shows how interactive and dynamic all the elements are. Notice that all the flows go in both directions. Now we're looking at the modus operandi, how the economy works. It is the capital structure that leads to transformation. The human spirit expresses itself through action. The basis of law is property rights, and order comes about via the market. It's time to see what is driving the economy. It is entrepreneurship. Humans are always in various stages of active or latent entrepreneurship. What completes the divine economy model? It is the nature and role of knowledge. That is what the economy revolves around. This axis is what has the potential for bringing about justice and unity, since that is the highest achievement of knowledge. How does the economy work? A dynamic model is one that takes into account time. Here's a look at the divine economy over time. Of course, the natural condition is an ever-advancing civilization, and so the divine economy expands over time. For example, the potential of entrepreneurship expands as the divine economy expands. Here's some new economic knowledge uniquely provided by the divine economy theory. Here you see the shorthand version of an ever-advancing economy, picking out and showing you just the nature and role of knowledge axis moving over time. When you look at a more complete picture of an ever-advancing economy, you see what is called the divine economy sphere frontiers. Notice the darkened quadrants at each time, T0, T1, T2. These small fragments, these quadrants, are what contemporary economics calls production possibility frontiers. With this new knowledge and new methodology, what actually causes production is better understood. It is a matter of identifying the macro aggregates and their no growth point. So, let's look at a production possibility frontiers. What is important is to identify the no growth point, the relative position of the aggregates along the frontier. If it is south and east of the no growth point, then the economy expands. The standard production possibility frontier looks at consumption and investment as the two aggregates. If investment is greater than consumption, then the economy expands. If the aggregates are north and west of the no growth point, the economy contracts. If consumption is greater than investment, then the economy contracts. Here is a series showing some unique contributions of the divine economy theory. The first aggregates are action and inaction. If action is greater than inaction, the economy expands. In the second of the series, the aggregates are laws that protect and laws that encroach. If laws that protect are greater than laws that encroach, the economy expands. In the third of the series, the aggregates are spontaneous order and planned order. If spontaneous order is greater than planned order, the economy expands. The next revolutionary contribution of the divine economy theory to economics is the placement of all economic concepts relative to each other. All concepts are defined clearly. Here are the four quadrants ready for the placement of economic concepts and principles. Here are all the economic concepts and principles placed into the model. The economic principles in the human spirit order quadrant are price theory, marginal utility, imperfect knowledge, profit and loss, economic calculation, prices of higher order goods, disutility of labor, and competitive theory. The economic principles in the order transformation quadrant are division of labor, medium of exchange, time preference, pure rate of interest, savings, monetary theory, entrepreneurship, risk, disequilibrium. The economic principles in the transformation law quadrant are willingness to work, leisure, productivity, comparative advantage, capital goods and capital, capital theory, capital structure spectrum, capital in conceptual time and historical time. And the economic principles in the law human spirit quadrant are subjective valuation, consumer sovereignty, purchasing power of money, contracts, and standard of living. Now that we know what affects production and how economic concepts constitute the economic laws that operate in the economy, we can propose economic policy. This economic policy is what will bring about prosperity. Policy 1, well-defined and continually refined property rights. Policy 2, the right of secession. Policy 3, market forces will moderate business sizes. Policy 4, enforcement of property rights. Policy 5, education about entrepreneurship. Policy 6, war and inflation violate property rights. Policy 7, gold passes the market test. Policy 8, counteract the misinformation about capital. Policy 9, new capital is a good start. Policy 10, international free trade. And policy 11, minimal taxation. Now we're going to look at microeconomics. What is the first necessary step to understand microeconomics? It is to discard the faulty method of empiricism and adopt the method that recognizes the power and beauty of subjective human beings. We now have at our fingertips a model that enables us to go to the center, to the heart of the economy for every human being. Let me show you what I mean. Here we see the macro model and take note of its structure. It is a Cartesian diagram, and the X, Y, and Z axes are plain to see. We label these axes as order, transformation, and justice. Now we position ourselves at the end of each vector and look towards the center. What we see is a two-dimensional plane. These two-dimensional planes are like tablets in the hearts of each and every human being. There are 6 vectors, so there are 6 tablets. What is written on the tablet of human hearts? This is where the human virtues reside, which in a minute you will see why this is so important and how it is connected to economics. This is an example of the virtues that reside on the tablets of human hearts. When activated, it is like a spark and action takes place. Recognize the model at the center of this spark. The spark represents human action. This is the divine microeconomy model. It is causal realistic, going from cause to effect, from virtue to service or product. From the time economics emerged as something important, value was at its core. What is value? Where does it come from? Progress was made in economic science when value at the margin was recognized. More progress was made when value was recognized as being subjective, but never before, until now, was the source of value scientifically identified. By using the methodology of subjectivism, one of the revolutionary contributions to economic science provided by the divine economy theory is that the origin and source of all value is the appearance of the names and attributes of God in all things. For example, consider excellence. As an expression of my will to live and love life, I show a particular keenness towards the things that I enjoy. It follows then that I will continue to strive for excellence in that pursuit, whatever it is. Matching the right task with the right person to perform the task is one key to productivity, and entrepreneurs are alert to this prospect. If those who are producing a good or service excel at it, then everyone in the entire economy benefits, ultimately. Imagine yourself having to choose between various products of similar prices, but you happen to know that one company has a reputation for excellent production standards. This attribute is known as product quality, and it is a major factor in decision making. Of course, you, as well as everyone else, will choose the best product. Here we have product quality as an example of the tangible goods and services emerging from excellence. By acquiring and practicing excellence, there will be a more refined division of labor, which will translate into greater productivity. Everything has value because it is perceived as having one or more than one attribute of God, whether it is sought after for consumption or whether it is produced. Alertness is the human reaction that drives the economy. Entrepreneurship is the exercise of alertness combined with a willingness to take on risk. In other words, it is entrepreneurship that drives the economy. The alertness characteristic of the entrepreneurial spirit is the guide used to discover which ends to pursue and which means are available. Successful identification of the relevant ends and means is what ultimately determines whether a decision is right. If it is right, the axis moves to the right. The advancement of the market process and of the divine economy and of civilization is the motive, albeit hidden deep within the human reality. Why is the divine economy theory important? It gives the entrepreneur hints about the what, why, when, and where of value. It is then the entrepreneur's task to test and implement the how to provide value. The key to understanding entrepreneurship is that the entrepreneur discovers opportunities, responds to opportunities, and generates opportunities by bearing uncertainty. This process is a competitive process, which exists when there is freedom. Freedom for those with better ideas to pursue their ideas, and freedom for those with a greater willingness to serve, to then go ahead and serve the needs conveyed via the market process. Entrepreneurship is essentially an exercise of a part of our spiritual reality. Those who exhibit praiseworthy characteristics will be found, and it is the desirability of human virtues that will continually move human civilization towards prosperity. True prosperity implies ethics and justice. That's where we're going next. But first, let's review the monumental macroeconomic and microeconomic discoveries of the divine economy theory. You can now see what the economy looks like. You now know that the production possibility frontier is just a quadrant of the divine economy sphere frontier. You know what leads to economic expansion. You know how interconnected and interrelated all the economic concepts and principles are. You know the 11 economic policies that lead to the long-run advancement of the standard of living for everyone on the planet. You now know that the tablet of the heart is where economic value rests, and that the origin of all value is the appearance of the names and attributes of God in all things. This is one of the greatest discoveries in economics, since value is at the center of economics. And you know that entrepreneurship is the driving force of the economy. We're now going to examine the relationship between scarcity and production. The reason there is scarcity is because human wants are unlimited, but the means are limited. Production ameliorates scarcity. Production generates income. Individuals discover and react to information in the market as part of their division of labor to produce and to earn income, to meet their personal desires for goods and services. This slide shows how microeconomics influences macroeconomics. We saw how excellence positively influenced production. That leads to an expanding divine economy sphere frontier, which, over time, carries the ever-advancing economy in the direction of prosperity. We're now going into the uncharted waters of ethical economics. We are about to look at something that economic science has shied away from. Without the methodology of subjectivism, there is no chance of bridging together the two sister disciplines of ethics and economics. Without recognizing the harmony of science and religion, economic science runs into a wall. What is amazing about the divine economy theory is that it successfully, logically, and scientifically merges economics and ethics. Consider this. People desire things, material and ideal. Ideal wealth and an advancing civilization complement each other. What we are interested in is the study of purposeful action by spiritual beings, an identity in the divine economy theory. The divine economy theory is so powerful that the axioms of a positive ethical system came to light. Nowhere else in the economic literature will you find a positive ethical system spelled out. The 16 axioms of the ethics of the divine economy, a positive ethical theory, are: humans carry their thoughts into the realm of action. 2, being a seeker after truth is part of the human operating system. 3, the definition of praxeology used in the divine economy theory is purposeful action by spiritual beings, and it is interwoven with ethics. 4, every human being decides what is best for himself, herself, and this decision is referred to as subjective rather than as selfish. 5, what catches the attention of human beings is the appearance of the names and attributes of God. 6, the content of our actions is the conveyance of the names and attributes of God. 7, humans are interested in the science and the art of existence. 8, our human limit is the point where a higher kingdom is reached, one that is incomprehensible to the lower kingdom. 9, the Word of God extends our knowledge of spiritual concepts. 10, the first and foremost ethic for the divine economy is trust in God. 11, the ethics between the macro and the micro level is seamless. 12, acquisition of virtues constitutes private property. 13, human rights are property rights, and property rights are human rights. 14, the price system serves as a language of the market economy, and intertemporal prices, for example, interest rates, function the same as all other prices emerging from voluntary exchange. 15, production is a human creation, emulating God, the creator. 16, pure entrepreneurship is the discovery of something from nothing. This knowledge and wisdom advances civilization. Now let's take a look at where ethics is in the divine economy model. Notice the darkened arrows of the ethical strand of the model. The ethics aspect can be found in the vertical strand of the model. There are relationships and symbols throughout creation that are fully recognized by the human intellect and which make the infinite more approachable by the finite. An example of one such relationship is a covenant. There is a power that comes from a covenant, which is a type of contract. Let's talk about the concept of a covenant that we find in the scriptures. God enters into a covenant with those created in his image. The covenant states that he would never leave them to themselves. He would never deprive them of his love and grace. This concept allows me to add the second component of the ethics model of the divine economy. Notice in the diagram the role played by the divine economy. It not only serves as the discovery and testing ground for the virtues, transformation, but it also is the means for the attainment of the divine civilization. The potential outcome of each revelation is the appearance of a divine civilization, of course, relative to the spiritual and social capacity of humankind for that dispensation. We are not finished with the very powerful concept of the covenant of God. What is the other half, the reciprocal half of that covenant? God promises to guide us, but what is our end of the deal? Reciprocally, we are bound together as one human family. Perhaps that is the underlying reason why we are basically social creatures. Nevertheless, the economy is the divine institution that enables us to fulfill our end of the deal. As you can see, the divine economy is the means to attain the ends. To further develop the ethics model, the model is placed juxtaposition to a portion of the symbol of the greatest name, which was designed by Abdu'l-Baha. Let me describe the symbol for you. Notice that the top horizontal line and the bottom horizontal line look alike. The top represents God, and the bottom represents the human being created in his image. The center or horizontal line represents the messengers of God, sent in every age to guide and educate humanity as promised as part of the covenant. The center vertical line represents the Holy Spirit, the Word of God, which connects finite humans to the infinite God and teaches us his will. The reason I place the greatest name symbol in juxtaposition to the model is to make some comparisons and to contrast. This exercise is an example of combining both the art and science of economics. Notice the horizontal layers across all three representations, and notice the similarities in what they represent. Now compare how in each form there is also a verticality to them, which seems to bring together realms that otherwise might be perceived as unconnected. Changing to a contrasting mode also reveals some very exciting points. The vertical connecting symbol in the greatest name is continuous, ever-flowing as promised in the covenant, whereas in the leftmost portion, the vertical movement needs to enter and exit, flowing in both directions and undergoing some kind of processing along the way. And then notice that in the center portion of the model, the flow is only unidirectional. The main benefit from juxtaposing the greatest name was to gain a further understanding of the moral authority of the divine economy. There is a sacredness in this covenant between God and each of us. The divine economy is part of the fulfillment of our sacred nature, that is, our created in his image nature. In the ethics model, the unidirectional proportion of the DR, DE, DC model appears to exhibit finality, but that is a short-run phenomenon. Within a single dispensation, there is a fully completed cycle which comes to an end. In the long run, the model would have a more dynamic nature, as shown in this slide. The determining factors of these cycles since the beginning of time have been the condition of the world, that is, the physical, intellectual, and spiritual evolution of humanity. This is part of what is called the greater covenant of God. When human beings are ready to receive the next revelation, then it occurs. Economics is the study of the means to attain the ends, and that is exactly why the divine economy theory is so important. The divine economy is the means. Therefore, it is to be studied. Religion and ethics are like sisters from the same household. They are not exactly the same, yet there is a familial resemblance. Many of their features are quite similar. Those who know both sisters, of course, know that they come from the same source. Those who only know one, ethics, for example, see the virtues of that one, but know only part of the worth of that household. Religion explores and explains why. Science explores and explains what and how. Science that is misaligned with religion does a relatively poor job of exercising its powers. Misaligned science is like a clean and polished mirror in need of light to be reflected in it. To leave religion out of human evolution in any of the facets of human accomplishment is to leave out tremendously significant content and influence. This is true in the past, as it is true in the present, and as it will be true in the future. Ethics is a universal feature of religion and a universal foundation for civilization. Look at human history and see the progress. Even though human progress is relative, never really achieving its full potential, the advancement of humans as individuals, as producers, and as a progressive series of structures of human civilization is remarkable. Human thought expressed as action is the reason for the progress. To complete the picture of a fully integrated and comprehensive economic theory, we're going to look at economic justice. Nowhere else in the economic literature will you find such a magnificent exposition on economic justice. The inseparability between the individual and the surrounding culture is part of the symmetry and harmony and reciprocity exhibited throughout all of what we think to be reality. The power of equilibrium is not just an economic phenomenon. It is universal for all aspects of human civilization. Equilibrium is not instantaneous, it is a tendency, and if it is achieved, it happens in the future. In other words, the human civilization equilibrium diagram has another dimension that is implied. The time element is necessarily a part of the long-run nature of equilibrium. Justice is the step taken to objectify the ethics that protects the subjective qualities of human action. Justice is a known concept because it is either present or absent, and therefore it is able to be perceived. It exists in the context of human relationships and human civilization. That which promotes social cooperation among everyone in the long run is just. Because justice is natural and part of human society, it is perceivable. The reason it is natural is simply because social cooperation is the normal pattern within human society. Cooperation is a way to optimize productive, nonviolent human energy. Justice is present or injustice is present, depending on whether law is natural or whether its derivation is ego-driven. Law, decreed by legislation, is at variance with the market process. To go against the norms, to act immorally, and to run counter to the wisdom of ethics requires two things: an ego-driven motivation and an economic incentive. Laws can either eliminate that incentive or enable it. Now, with this in mind, try to imagine what the effect would be if something would come into the picture, into the economy, and distort the natural reciprocity that occurs as part of social cooperation. That is what rotten laws do. Laws exist all around us. The natural world, throughout the expansive universe, operates according to laws. It is through this objectifying process that norms were formalized into laws, and it was through this process that formalized procedures of how to deal with new circumstances were deduced. Part of the modernization of law was its formalization. Broadly speaking, the legal code evolved into two basic forms: as codified, customary law, and as common law. Codified law spelled it all out, and it was therefore accessible to anyone who was interested. With common law, judges both made law and applied it. Common law eventually became the privileged arena of judges and lawyers. Obviously, restricted access and specialized jargon and legalistic methods created an enhanced opportunity for intervention. Surely, the economy is intimately connected to law. We are at a threshold in human history. That threshold is the transition from interventionism, which lacks moral authority, to trust in the equilibrium force that exists as a divine institution, for lack of a better term, as part of God's creation of human beings in his image. We are at the threshold of understanding how to establish a divine civilization in its fullness. We are at a threshold that was not achievable in the past. What we're talking about is spontaneous order. The justice strand of the divine economy model connects law with order. The justice aspect can be found in the horizontal strand of the model. The divine economy model is at the heart of every individual, and it is the spark of all human action. I'm now showing you the development of the model since you were introduced to the model of the ethics of the divine economy. In the complete model of the justice of the divine economy, we have law on the left, and we have order on the right. And that order is most definitely a contractual society. A contractual society is the ideal, and a covenant is what makes it realizable. A contractual society is pretty much what is the outcome of putting into practice the 10 principles of classical liberalism. I think everyone can agree that justice is a pivotal feature of human civilization. Justice is what is needed to bring into balance the liberty of economic freedom. Our first task is to discover good laws so that our purposeful action is a positive force. And then, ultimately, our task is to discover divine laws and be attuned to the will of God. That is what will yield the ultimate good, a divine civilization. This is not something that will happen quickly, but the workings of justice and unity will yield higher and higher and more exalted social cooperation. That is how our human civilization evolves towards its potential. These are the 8 books about the divine economy theory that are available on Amazon. There are 4 core books. There's a macro and micro textbook. There is my magnum opus, and also a book that tracks the model throughout the theory. And the last one is about applying the divine economy theory. This is my business name and logo. This shows my homepage of my website.